A 3-year absence. I forgot to push that back.
That's not Newfoundland music, my son. You got Newfoundland music here or not? Okay, well, that's you should have forget that part. Eyes to buy, that's a great Newfoundland song. Well, here he is. This has been quite the day, I think, for you folks. You had to deal with some technical issues, but it's worked out in the end, hasn't it, Richard Bye? Okay, now, next thing we got to do here is we got to get organized a little bit and see where the script is. Lord, it's hard to get good help these days. Okay, we start here then, Richard. So you're celebrating Canada Day, I guess, eh? Is that what you're up to today?
Yes, I am. Captain Slimey Bottom.
Indeed, I is Captain Slimy Bottom. Well, I got to tell you a little about you, a little bit about me. He was supposed to prompt me by saying that, but he had different plans. So, anyway, I used to be a cod fisherman. In Newfoundland, but I had to give that up because there were no more codfish left in the sea. But I originally come from Marystown, and everybody here must know Marystown. Anybody know Marystown? Oh, like they love to party in Marystown. Anybody here up for a party today? Yeah. Well, there he goes. But Marystown, the claim to fame to Marystown, it's got to be the ugliest town in Newfoundland. It's so bad that when the seagulls flies overhead, they turns upside down because there's nothing in there worth pooping on. Now, I went to work for the government of Newfoundland because I couldn't get a job as a cod fisherman, obviously, because there was no fish left. And Newfoundland is the finest province in all of Canada. Now, I know that you guys from Ontario aren't going to believe that because you think that Ontario is the center of the universe. But in Ontario, I was watching something on TV the other day, and they showed the guys in Ontario. There were 6 of them, and they had a government mission. And the mission was to change a light bulb. And there was one guy on the ladder changing the light bulb. There was another guy down below holding the ladder. And there was 4 other guys taking notes and then clapping each other on their shoulders saying, this was the best damn project they ever had. They'd done such a good job. They were going to write a big government report about the huge success of that thing they did there. So, anyway. I is in Newfoundland the Minister for Extramarital Affairs, and I'm here today for a special mission, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about that later. But Richard, I suppose you would like to know how my wife is.
I was just about to ask, how is your wife?
Well, she's fine, and thanks for asking, incidentally. My wife Sandy and my daughter Coral. And they both very well back in Newfoundland, although we had a tough winter there so far because my snowblowers were left it after the last storm because it ran out of gas, so it's still sitting on the roof. Now, I goes out for a walk every night with my daughter Coral when I'm at home, and that's a lot because when I'm working with the government, I don't get out much. So I went out walking with her. And we was out for the walk, and this is about a month ago, and she turns to me and says, Daddy, could you talk like a frog? And I said, talk like a frog? No, Coral, I can't talk like a frog. Why would you ask me that? Well, don't worry about it. So a few nights later, we're going out for another walk, and she says, Daddy, would you please talk like a frog? And I said, that's twice you've asked me to do that, and I still can't talk like a frog. I don't know what's going on. Well, she says nothing, and then the next time we go out, she says, Daddy, could you please talk like a bullfrog? And I said, look, that's enough of this stuff. You got to tell me why is you asking me to talk like a frog? I told you I couldn't talk like a frog, so you better fess up and tell me why you want me to tell you this. And so she comes back and she says, well, Daddy, because Mommy says when you coach, we're all leaving for Florida. Now, I was out in the backyard, and I was digging a hole, and a neighbor comes over, and he says, what you up to? I said, well, My poor daughter Coral, her budgie bird called Chirpy, died. And I'm burying Chirpy. And the guy says, well, that's a pretty big hole. It's about 2 feet by 2 feet. That's a big hole for a budgie, isn't it? And I said to him, not when it's in a friggin' cat. Now I suppose you'd like to talk to me about Rusty. You want to know how Rusty is, right?
I was just going to ask you, how's Rusty?
Oh, Rusty's my brother. And he's my stupid brother. I expect that some of you has stupid brothers out there. Anybody here got a stupid brother? I see some hands. Is that him sitting right next to you there? Anyway, he's so stupid. Rusty, he goes... He goes what? Page 2. That's what he does. No, we had a snowstorm over in Newfoundland there, and he called me. I was down here already, and he called me up and he said, look, we're having a big snowstorm here. And I said, well, how are you guys making out? And he said, well, the house is holding up all right, but it's shaking because the winds is blowing at about 100 miles an hour, and we're getting snow, and it's been snowing for 8 hours, and it's just terrible down here. And he said, I'm not worried too much about the house. I think it'll hold up, and I'm worried about Patty. Patty is his wife. And I said, well, what's the matter with Patty? And he says, well, Patty is scared. She's so scared, I've never seen anything like it. She's shaking like a leaf, and she keeps staring through the windows, and she moves from one window to the next, staring, and she just seems so scared. And so I said, look, it's your job to look after that poor woman. You've got to make sure that she's well and that she's looked after and cuddle her, and because it's scary for her, then you've got to look after her. And he says, you know what? I think you might be right, Rusty. I'll wait about another hour, and if it doesn't stop, I think I'll unlock the doors and let her in. And he lives in the neighborhood. Patty's mother-in-law, or Rusty's mother-in-law, Patty's mother, moves in with him. And then one day, Patty's out shopping. The mother-in-law has a heart attack, and the poor woman dies right there at the house. And so Rusty, he calls 911 to tell him, and says, look, my mother-in-law, she's died in the house. I need for you to come and pick her up, pick up the body. And they said, yes, sir, we can do that. We'll be there right away. What's your address? And he says, 437 Eucalyptus Lane. And they said, could you spell that, please? And there's silence for a minute, and then Rusty says, well, I'll drag her over to Main Street. You can pick her up there. So Rusty goes to the doctor in Halifax. He happened to be in Halifax for something. And he goes into the doctor and he says, doctor, I think I'm really sick. And the doctor says, what's the matter with you? And he says, well, it hurts everywhere. He says, I touch my chest, it hurts. I touch my elbow, it hurts. I touch my leg, and it hurts. And it's terrible. And the doctor says, what part of Newfoundland are you from, my son? And he says, well, why do you ask that? He said, because you got a broken finger. Now, Rusty, he completed a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle. We knows about that at RCR. There's plenty of them here. And he calls the Guinness Book of Records and says, you know what? I finished the puzzle here, and I want the prize. I want to be in the Guinness Book of Records for doing this. And they said, well, what's special? And he said, well, I did it in 6 weeks. And they said, in 6 weeks? Well, what's special about that? And Rusty says, well, it says right in the box, 5 to 7 years. Well, that's enough about Rusty, but I got to tell you about my buddy Clyde, because I do some work on the Middle Cove Beach down to our bay, where I do some lifeguarding, because I got the physique for it, see? And they have this buddy, he comes down to the beach, and he comes to see me, and he says, I don't know if you can help me out or not, but he says, you know, Slimey, I can't attract any lady friends. I'm trying to come to the beach, and I strut down the beach hoping that they're going to be interested in me, and we're going to have a relationship or something, but they all don't want to have anything to do with me. So I gave him some advice, and I said, what you really needs to do here, Clyde, is you needs to start by dressing the part. You got to get a pair of red Speedos like them folks from Quebec wear. You know, these tight trunks, swimming trunks. And you've got to get a pair that's 2 sizes too small. And then when you're going down the beach, before you go out and buy the biggest potato you can find. And then you stuff that potato into the Speedos. He says, and I said, my son, you will find that you're going to be attracting women all over the place. So next time I'm down there doing my lifeguarding, doesn't he come strutting down the beach, and he's walking along there like Rock Hudson, okay, going down the beach. And all the girls is gagging and they're turning away and hiding their eyes, and it's terrible. And he comes up to me and he says, no, that didn't work too good. You told me that was going to work. And I look at him and I said, oh my God, Clyde, you're supposed to put the potato down the front, not the back. And then I got to tell you about this old Newf that I saw on the bus the other day. This Newfoundlander is an old gentleman, and he gets on the bus down in downtown St. John's. And the bus is full, and he's at the front, so he's holding onto a strap. It's only standing room in the bus. And he's holding onto the strap, and the bus is going along. And the next stop, a guy gets on, and this guy's a punk rocker. And he's dressed in all kinds of black leather and stuff, and he's got all kinds of rings in his nose and in his ears and everywhere that you put one. And he's got a rooster haircut, and the hair is like pink and yellow and purple, all the colors of the rainbow in this fella's hair. So the old Newfoundlander just keeps on, he goes up and he's looking at him, turning around and sides, and the young punk rocker, he gets a little bit, he's a little bit perplexed, but anyway, he moves halfway down the bus to get away from the old guy. The old guy follows him back and does the same thing all over again, checking them all out. So the punk rocker finally moves to the back of the bus, while the Newfoundlander guy goes back after him at the back of the bus, and the punk rocker looks at him and says, I don't know why you're following me, but you're looking at the way I dress, but did you ever do anything stupid in your life? And the old Newfoundlander looks at him and said, yes, indeed I did, my son. And he says, I had sex with a chicken once, and I think you might be my son. Okay, now, I think it's time for us to move on to the next.